Why, hello there. Hey, Blue Table fans. You know, I say that like compulsively now. I can't, there have been times when I've like answered the phone that way in the history of the company. Like I was answering so many calls and emails that it was like, you know, hey, Blue Table fans. Oh yeah, oh, hello. Yeah, so anyway, hey guys, this is the 2019 Blue Table Painting / Sean Gately retrospective video, which will end up being more like a ramble, which reminds me I better have some water handy. Hold on a second. Yeah, I don't prepare these things very well. I just keep like a little note card with subjects on it. Did you enjoy looking at my shelves while I was gone? All right. Now, this year I had hoped to improve personal habits. I won't tell you what, but I've got some bad habits, and this was going to be the year to change all that. And the answer is I didn't do anything. I made zero progress in my personal life in terms of bad and good habits. Okay, I did cook Thanksgiving dinner. This will be, I believe it is my third Thanksgiving dinner. And this one was the one that was mostly edible. Like I kind of turned that corner where like the majority of the things on that table were edible. And yeah. So this year marked 5 years divorced. So that's something. Those all that old stuff is sort of healing over, and not for me. I felt nothing. No, I'm joking. Of course I felt something. So anyway, you know, I'm going to make my pitch first. I've got a couple of specials that I've had. Well, I've had a special called Hero of the Imperium, which is definitely check out the link in the liner notes for that. But I do plan on doing away with the Hero of the Imperium special, and I'm very sad for it because I've been running it for 10 years. I've discharged so many of them. It's incredible, and but I have one on the block. And it might be the last one. And this isn't a... Oh, and I also became familiar with FOMO marketing. FOMO means fear of missing out. And that's not something that I do. So what I just said may sound like that, but it's actually not. I really am planning on phasing them out. And it is really a good deal. And you really should pick one up if you can. So there's that. Aspiring Warlord was a special I did this year, starting in 2018. I actually had some of those going. I only had 3 people do it. It was successful, but not successful in terms of how many people were doing it. So there you go. But I am allowing 2 more slots for that. So check the liner notes for that. And it might just be something that'll work for you. I think they're good. I think my company is good. We definitely grind it all out. And I think that's what Blue Table Painting brings to the table, is that it's more than just you hiring someone to paint your models. It's that, but it's also it's a substructure. Like, I always have artists that I am training, I'm moving them down the field, I'm consolidating my position, and so there's a confidence and a surety that you should have when you have your project done with us. Basically, the only thing that can go wrong is it might take longer to do it, but it will get done. And yeah, I've often said Blue Table Painting is like the ugly girlfriend of the miniatures painting world. We may not look like much, but we're there when you need us. All right. I have no idea how well that blurb may age in future years. I'll be running for office and they'll be like, is it true that you think that your company is like an ugly girlfriend? I'll be like, what? What are you talking about? I will have forgotten all about it by then. But the internet is forever, people. So don't make a mistake, even one mistake, because that will be blown up into everything that you ever were and ever will be. So anyway, all right. Oh, by the way, I got a new coat recently. I went out with my lovely wife, Milady, and she was wearing one of these coats, which I'm not a this kind of coat guy. I am a pea coat guy. Like some class, some buttons, herringbone pattern, or whatever it is. You know, a little bit of style. So this is like way dressed up. But this is like super comfortable. It's almost like a sweater. I see why you guys wear these now. So I'm pretty stoked. This is on like super sale. I guess coats are on sale now. It's midwinter. How can coats be so cheap? Well, and you know me, I'm an optimist. I almost said optometrist. So I'm an optimist. I think things are getting better. They're certainly getting better for me. Jack. All right. Let's see. Well, hey, let's talk about Christmas. So Christmas this year was great. My lovely ex-wife, who is a wonderful human, by the way, she had the kids. Now, when we were first divorced, I was like, I want to do a full Christmas production, and then she could do a full Christmas production, because I enjoyed it. But the fact is, no one does Christmas like Mom, you know. So, and she, of course, she's remarried, lives about 15 minutes away from me, and which is nice. Which is nice. It's weird if you're ever married 20 years and get divorced. It'll be weird seeing your ex with somebody else. That'll be strange. We did have a technically white Christmas in Utah. Like a 1/4 inch of snow came down, dusted everything in the morning, made it all beautiful, and then it was gone, and I didn't have to shovel it. So, ha ha! I loved that. That was fed. That was my kind of white Christmas. A no shoveling Christmas. Yeah. So here's the deal. So Christmas. Oh yeah, and I just cocooned up with my sweetheart. It was awesome. Like I woke up in my pajamas and then I went to bed that night in the same pajamas. Just for the record, I did shower. I just had the same pajamas on. Yeah, I shower a lot, but like in the summer, I'll shower like 4 times a day. But they're really short. So some people are like, shower 4 times a day? Because you're thinking of your shower, which is like a half an hour. No, it's more like rinsing off. Right? Don't you feel gross in the summer? All sweaty. So first off, yeah, I'm going to talk about getting remarried in a little bit. But my lovely young wife, I caught her watching Rogue One. And she was into it. And she watches movies with like this childlike intensity that, you know, and she talks a lot too, which I love. She's like, you know, when they're getting tractored into the Death Star, you know, she's like, oh, no, how are they going to get out of this one? And so she has that accent and she's just like really into it, you know. And it's just great. Like she's watching a movie and I'm just like looking at her, you know, and she's like, what? I'm like, it's great. I'm like, this is my movie. So then I was like, hey, this dovetails into the original, you know, 1977 Star Wars as like one continuous thing. And she was like, oh, wow. So we watched, I basically spent Christmas watching the original Star Wars trilogy with my new wife who saw them through like new eyes. Now she had seen them when she was like, you know, 6 years old or whatever. And 6 years old? No, she must have been, she wasn't even born when Star Wars came out. So anyway, yeah, so that was really awesome. And I really enjoyed it, had a great Christmas. We're still kind of in the holidays. I always like, because I'm a bit of a workaholic, I'm always like cranking it. And even on Christmas Day, I was like ready to answer emails. I was staying on top, making instruction sheets. And that's kind of the life of running Blue Table Painting, is there's always something to keep going on. All right, so next topic, we're going to talk about the wargaming community. And this was a breakthrough for me, because I've had phases where like I'm into 40K, I'm into Warhammer Fantasy, you know, I'm doing whatever at War Machine. I had War Machine for a while. And, you know, but this year I had a bit of a breakthrough. And I realized there's no escaping competitive Warhammer 40K. And it's not pretty. I had sort of a like a breakthrough moment when I saw this picture of 3 repulsor executioners in a triangle with like a dreadnought character thing in the middle. And I was just like, this is not, it's certainly not the 40K that I knew and loved. And of course, this is just the old riff of someone pining away for what was. And that's certainly not me. But by the way, we could go to Star Wars with that too. So yeah, oh, and this morning she was up to The Last Jedi. So we've watched all 9 of them. And all right, so back to wargaming. And that just kind of killed my soul. And I was going to get into it. Like, I bought a ticket for an actual competition. I was going to bring an awesome army. I had heard about this Tau shield drone thing. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. Oh yeah, but by that time, everybody's doing that. There's like this lag. So the internet is fast. Actually painting and fielding an army is slow. And that's what I get a lot, is that, you know, people come to me and like they want to crank it out. And I'm working on that, by the way. Blue Table Painting, our turnaround time is like getting better and better. And I want to get it down to sort of this dream level of where we are really, you know, it's white hot. A month. Any project taking at most a month, I consider a white hot. And you can, by the way, theoretically, you can get it down to just a number of days. Like if your institution were coordinated enough and you had all of the materials and manpower ready and the location, you could do a large army in just 2 or 3 days and have it look great. You would do it in shifts and it would all be very organized. All right, so anyway, back to mitosis of the gaming community. And that is that the technology of the internet, of having everything, the sum of human wisdom and thought available at all times, makes it so that any group is bound to have, you know, people that are net listing in it. That's where you go on the internet and you find a competitive, sort of a tested list. Even early on, people that are really good at the game can sort of predict what's going to be good. And I think the problem in 40K is with design. Once you get into force multipliers, then you're just back to the old thing where you kind of have to make an army a certain way. Those of you that, you know, were wargaming in the 90s and the zeros were like, you remember the thing where, an army book would come out. That's all you could do. There were no allies. So an army book would come out and you just, you identify the good units and then that would be it, because the points wouldn't be updated for 4 years. And now they're sort of like, they can solve that because they can change the points very quickly, but which is good. By the way, it's a step in the right direction. I love it. But by introducing too many elements too fast, you never let it sort of solidify where you can actually sort of purchase an army and have it be relevant. Because, I mean, the net list can come out, you can scramble to put the army together, and by the time the army's together, they've already nerfed it. And I'm just like, oh, well, is that balance? But that's like they're always imbalancing things. And I learned that in that one battle report I did against Colton, where I basically it wasn't a fun game. And he's a great guy, don't get me wrong, but I had already lost walking to the table, because that army had enough firepower that it would just melt everything that stepped within range. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of what the game is now. And so unless you're ready to come to the table with, a a real male-fisted ball breaker with spikes, well, maybe you're not going to have such a good time. You can't just have this sort of casual list anymore, even in a friendly group. So I don't know. I guess the solution really is to either, really go competitive, and that's great. There's not a problem with that. Here in Utah, there's a great community for competitive 40Kers. And, well, and I played Warhammer Fantasy in 2002, and the group I was with, they were competitive, and they learned everything and painted their armies, but it was sort of a slower pace. Like, it would be measured in years. You'd make your army, and it would be relevant for like a really long time, because they would only update each army book every 4 years or so. So, anyway, yeah, so I kind of like, that sort of broke my mind. I was like, oh. So the solution is a game like Necromunda, is role-playing games. Role-playing games, you have a DM, and that person runs everything. And if you like your DM and you got players that, are all on the same page, they understand the nature of it, and the DM is competent and he can handle, power gamers or whatever, emotional gamers, then you've got a good group. And I guess in a way, that's what it really comes down to, just having a good group. And you don't need a lot of people for that. So with Necromunda, I bought the books. I started buying books. And I'm going to do a video on that, by the way. Like, you don't need to buy every book that they make. In fact, there's a lot of irrelevant books out there. But there's an arbitrator in Necromunda, which can be up to and including exactly like a role-playing game DM. You can change the rules, you can change the point costs on things. You're kind of like moving into his world. And that's how I'm running my Necromunda game, is I'm making actual adventures. And then we're doing the regular gang stuff where you roll the dice and, it's all just normal. I had to scratch my nose. Okay, so blah blah blah. So that's my view on the wargaming community, and that is Retrospective 2019. That was all sort of my personal wargaming evolution in 2019. Is I love 40K. I'm staying abreast of things. I still watch the videos, and of course I see what comes through, and that informs me of what's good or where things are going with it. And so still ready to make recommendations on this 40K army, but I'm relying a little bit more on local resources. And in terms of the company, that's something that definitely happened in 2019, is I changed the attitude of the company, the direction of it just a little bit, to, instead of being very reclusive, I started reaching out to the local community and forming a lot more friendships and alliances. And that has definitely strengthened Blue Table Painting. And of course, army list building is part of that. Like, I had a client 2 days ago building a Blood Angels army, and in real time when I was chatting with him, I was able to get, 2 really good players to chime in on, what he was building, and actually tweak his list to be something that would be, I guess, more survival. Can you guys hold on just a second? I saw a squirrel, but don't worry, I chased him off. No, I closed a light source there. Yeah, can you see my glasses aren't glaring as bad? All right, whatever. So Necromunda, I love it. I love everything about it. I picked up a super cheap copy of Blackstone Fortress locally, and I've converted all those things into gangers and stuff, and that's my thing. Usually for an hour or 3 every night, I just sort of sit and paint and watch something on my phone. A little bit of noise going on. Started watching Lost in Space Season 2. Loved that. Started watching on YouTube. I started watching this Australian program called "Thank God You're Here," and I think it's pretty cool. So they take like an actor or whatever, and they have like a little set already set up, like a miniature stage with maybe one or two other actors on it, and a premise. So it's like an improv show. But they open the door because the guest, that person doesn't know what's waiting on the other side. They're just in some kind of costume, and they just have to improv this scene. So it's a lot of fun. Company status, Badger Hole 2.0 is going strong, and it makes me happy. I've definitely, in a few days, BTP will hit the 16-year mark, and I've learned a lot. 6 years ago, in the conference room, I had this sort of montage on poster board of what the company would look like when it had 200 people working there, between 200 and 300. And it was a little crazy, guys. It was, that was dreams of empire. But quite frankly, if you're going to come out to the miniatures assembly and painting industry, do note that it's a lot of quicksand, and so don't try and build a giant castle out here, because the tendency is that it will sink. And and I also learned a lot about myself. I am not a great leader. And people mistake that. They mistake, my natural good humor as leadership quality. And it's not, because I am really better suited to exactly how I'm doing it now. And that comes to principles in life and a way of living, and also a way of conducting a business. Because ultimately, if you own a company, your personality and who you really are is going to come out somehow in that structure. And you can either go with nature or you can go against nature. And if you go against nature, you're going to sink into the quicksand pretty fast. And if you go with nature, just pick a good spot, pick your own bedrock of who you really are. And the closer that is to being true to center, the better things will go, and if you want, the longer they will last as well. And I found that with me. So when a new artist comes on board, I warn them about, what my deal is. And it's not really a warning, it's just the truth. This is what this is. And I try to do it with my clients as well, through very well-stated policies, and of course what you get to see on these videos. Like, if you follow these videos for a year, you know what's going on. And I have a website that shows all the projects going through, exactly where they are in the process, and you can see how busy are we, what projects, things, sort of watch the process of things going through, and it's pretty good. Like, I keep my finger to the pulse. I don't want the studio to become over-stressed, but I also don't want it to become underburdened as well. Keep just that perfect sort of mix. And be true to myself. And Badger Hole 2.0, I've said it before, which is, when was I happiest in my professional life? It was in the Badger Hole 2008. Things were simple, the overhead was low, didn't have a lot of contact with other humans, and it really went well that way. But now I see the studio becoming stronger, and I'm at this really, not a lot, by the way, like it was a very, very modest gain this year. And that's great, because it was a permanent gain. Like, it wasn't something where I made some extraordinary effort to make it happen. It was there it is. It was a natural gain. Who knows if it will be permanent? And but it happened very, very naturally, and I feel good. I've got my artists. Like, I'm like, oh, by constantly improving people cross-pollinating artists where, you know, where they train together, and looking for new talent has created this crew that just sort of like gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And I am easier to get along with, you know, that I've become more of a centered person, and that affects my private life as well. So I'd say that is company status. I still have some things that I want to improve and things that I want to mop up, and I think at the end of 2020 it's going to be about as good as it's going to get. Like, this year is sort of my year where I'm going to be really polishing things up and working off the last of the rough edges for my current business model. Badger Hole 2.0. So, guys, oh no, I'm not even done yet. Where am I? 22 minutes. Well, that's not bad. End of the year ramble can clock in at half hour. You can't change as a person and also not have your relationships change and have those relationships stay the same. If you change as a person, guess what? Some people are going to go and new people are going to come in. And it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be okay. Don't hold on to those things. The pain comes from holding on. If you're floating down a river and you grab onto a tree branch nearby and you're just holding on for dear life, the current of that river is going to become very painful. Because you're holding two things together unnaturally. It sounds cliche, but go with the flow. If you just let go, everything will be fine. And don't fight the current, because the current will take you around those boulders and just sort of take you where you need to go. And you don't know. Sometimes what you want looks like it's upstream and you're going to have to really fight for it, but maybe it's downstream. Maybe you don't have to, you know, work so hard. Maybe circumstances and the orchestration of events will just turn to your advantage and bring you where you'd like to be, deposit you on a wonderful shore. Yeah. Sean's waxing rhapsodic or whatever. Okay, so anyway, oh, marriage. I was going to talk about marriage. In May of this year, I did not want to ever get married again. Didn't see the point. And by July, I was getting married and had a complete about face. And that's how it works sometimes. And I won't go off about how that came about or even recommend it to anybody. If anything, everybody has their own path, their own thing going on, and I really think that's great. I love it when I see somebody doing their own thing. Awesome. Good for you. Follow your muse. Same with my kids too. I'm there and can lend a strong hand when needed. However, I'm really interested in seeing what my kids choose and do with their own lives, what they want. And I think it's really neat. I've seen each of them develop their own style. I've got two that are out of the house now. I have two that are like an 11-year-old girl, a 14-year-old boy, so teenagers, I guess, a preteen there. And of course I have my 3-year-old girl. Oh my gosh, my 3-year-old girl, she is so headstrong. She's like her dad. She's outgoing. She knows what she wants. She's not afraid of things. And I'm just like, ooh, she's a handful, man. But just this week, it occurred to me, and I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to try something. I'm only going to whisper to her. So I just talk really soft to her all the time like this. And what's weird is, that's worked really well. I mean, I'm not giving advice, for all kids, but just a little bit of news. So marriage, yeah, I married, her name is Luli, rhymes with Julie. Yeah, it takes a while to get used to. And, people call her Lilu, what's the name of the gal on Futurama? Leela. No, Leela, yeah. All right, so Yeah. Anyway, and I met her right away. I met her 2 weeks after the divorce, and we were, I'll just tell you the story. Why not? So I had, obviously, in 2 weeks, I had not dated very much. Certainly was raring to go. And so I talked to her. I met her on eHarmony. I talked to her on the phone, and she lived with her dad. And I was like, oh, this would be like meeting a guy that still lives with his mom, you know? Is that real? And, she was pretty quiet. And I just she sort of seemed like this mousy librarian, but we made a date to meet at this Mediterranean place up in Salt Lake. I still lived in Spanish Fork, almost an hour away. And so I get there. I look awesome, of course. And I walk in, and I was expecting like a Subway sandwich, but with Mediterranean food, because that's kind of what I had seen before. But I go into this Mediterranean place. It's stunning. Like the ambiance is amazing. Beaten copper, the lamps, the sort of the Middle Eastern patterns everywhere. The smell of the food I was just like, wow, this place is amazing. I walk in, and in the back, there's sort of this sitting area. There's this, stunning raven-haired, ruby-lipped gypsy princess, and she's waving to me, giving me this like bright supermodel smile, and I'm like, oh, is the mousy librarian behind this hottie? And nope, it was her, and let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. So early on in dating, just like maybe 2 or 3 months in, she's like, hey, my biological alarm clock is screaming, so I'm looking for somebody to, give me 2 children. And I was like, all right. I looked at my vision board. My vision board, actually, I kind of had this feeling like maybe more were coming. And so I said yes. So we have an unusual relationship. We started as co-parents, and then ended up getting married so many years later. But that is a story for another time. And but we do have a 3.5-year-old daughter. Yeah, and if you're, oh, damn.